What's up, guys? I'm about 40 hours into the demo now, and after a lot of experimenting and testing, I want to share some suggestions on what I believe is the most optimal way to build your Digimon, depending on the role you want them to fill. To do this, I've spent a lot of time testing different passives and recording exact values and percentage boosts. Throughout this video, I'll be walking you through the results, comparing them side by side, and then showing how they can fit together into practical builds for your team. My goal is to give you a clear picture of what's strong, what's situational, and what's best avoided. So here's how we'll go through this. First, we'll take a detailed look at the passives I tested and the actual values of their boosts. After that, I'll explain which ones I think are worth focusing on and at what stages of the game. I've grouped passives with similar effects together. Once we've covered the passives, we'll move on to personality boosts. Finally, we'll put everything together and talk about how to combine these into optimized builds for different strategies. Quick side note before we begin. I haven't been able to test every single passive just yet, but I focused on the ones that are the most impactful in the early to mid-game. I'll keep expanding this as I get more time, but for now, this will give you a strong foundation. Let's begin with Fast Break and Intense Focus. These are simple offensive boosts that apply during the first 3 turns of a battle. For example, when testing with my Agumon, who has a base attack of 555, Turn 1 gave a massive 50% boost, Turn 2 dropped to 30%, and Turn 3 was only 10%. After that, starting Turn 4, the bonus ends completely. These abilities are fantastic if you expect a very quick fight, where you can end things before the enemy has time to retaliate. But if the fight drags on, their usefulness drops off sharply. So think of them as burst damage passives. Great for striking hard and fast, but not reliable in the long game. Next we have Steadfast Might, Steadfast Emotion, and Steadfast Heart. These are much more situational, but they also have the highest potential for raw power. These passives increase offense or defense by 10% for every 10% of health missing, starting from 90%. What this means is that the weaker your Digimon gets, the stronger these abilities become. At 30% health, I even saw it stack with Bravery, resulting in a single turn with a 120% boost. That's enormous. Of course, the downside is obvious. You have to be close to defeat to trigger these effects, which makes them risky. In the right circumstances, though, they can completely swing a battle. Slow Starter and Meditation are the opposite of Fast Break and Intense Focus. Instead of being strong in the opening turns, they grow in strength the longer the battle lasts. From turn 4, you get a 10% boost. On turn 5, this rises to 30%, and by turn 6, you're at a huge 50% boost. These passives are tailor-made for boss fights or longer battles, where you know the fight will drag out. They require patience, but if you can last long enough, they'll reward you with some of the best sustained damage in the game. Now let's look at Stout Strength, Stout Spirit, and Stout Defense. These were a little trickier to figure out. After testing with 3 different Digimon and comparing variants, I discovered that the boost scales with your health. At full HP, you get a strong 50% increase. But as soon as your health drops, the boost falls with it. At half health, it's only around 25%. What this really means is that these passives demand you stay at full health to keep their value. That's a big problem because in most fights you can't guarantee staying untouched. In theory, they're powerful, but in practice, they fall apart as soon as you take damage. Planning ahead, Cheer, and Fortifying Charge operate a bit differently from the others. Planning ahead and Cheer, calculate the total bond of your team, and then either buff your allies or reduce your opponent's defense by that number. At maximum bond, this should add up to 300, which is nothing to scoff at. Fortifying Charge, from what I could find, gives a flat 10% boost, though I haven't been able to reconfirm the source, so treat that with caution. The key point here is that these abilities depend heavily on your team composition and how much you've invested in bond. In the right setup, they can be very powerful, especially in coordinated teams. Counter, and by extension combo magic, are chance-based abilities. Testing Counter was frustrating to say the least. I defended over and over against Kuwagamon to measure how often it would activate. What I found was that it only seemed to come online when my health dropped below 50%. When it did work, though, it was interesting. It could even counter enemy skills and completely reduce incoming damage to 0. Combo magic probably functions in the same way. Unfortunately, the activation rate is far too inconsistent to recommend. In theory, these sound strong, but in practice, they're unreliable and risky to build around. Now let's move on to personality boost. I only found the exact values after uploading my initial video, but I've included them here so you can see them on screen. Take your time with these and pause the video if you'd like to study the numbers in more detail. These boosts add another layer of customization to your builds and can really help fine-tune your Digimon to fit specific strategies. So let's put this all together. When you're building a team, the key question you need to ask yourself is simple. What's your goal? If your goal is to one-shot a boss, you're going to want passives like Stout Strength or Stout Spirit, paired with Fast Break or Intense Focus. Add a teammate with Planning Ahead or Cheer to further amplify your damage or weaken the enemy. But keep in mind that Stout passives are very fragile. They lose value the moment you take damage. For most battles, especially against tougher enemies, Slow Starter and Meditation are far better. They give you consistent power in the turns that actually matter when bosses are still standing. Looking ahead to future, harder difficulties like Mega Plus, I believe Steadfast Might, Emotion, and Heart will gain tremendous value. But at the moment, they're too situational for regular use. Where they do shine, however, is on tanks. Steadfast Heart in particular is, in my opinion, the best non-healing defensive ability you can equip. I would recommend it across all difficulties without hesitation. So here's the conclusion. For attacking Digimon, the passives worth focusing on are Slow Starter, Meditation, or Haymaker, with Haymaker being a safe pick if you're building for critical hits. Pair these with allies that have Planning Ahead, or Cheer for maximum efficiency. In easier fights, you can switch over to Fast Break or Intense Focus for faster victories, but avoid the Stout passives unless you're confident you can stay at full health. Counter and combo magic, while interesting on paper, are just too unreliable to be practical. That covers everything we need to know right now about optimizing your Digimon builds. I'll keep testing and update you whenever I find more. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more guides like this. I've also opened a Discord server for anyone who wants to discuss strategies or share ideas. It's still a work in progress, but you're more than welcome to join. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.